Recognizes Mr. Burchett from Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it needs to be said that the Democrats had those files for 4 years and chose not to do anything with them, and now currently they're obsessed with it. I think that speaks volumes. But thank you all for being here, Mayor. Thank you, ma'am. I was a county mayor. It was the best job I think I've ever had.
Thank you.
And on days like today, I'm sure you're thinking, dadgum, I wished I hadn't run for this office. Should have sold Amway or something. But anyway, I have a couple questions for you, ma'am. President Trump's response to the spike in violent crime in Washington, D.C. lowered the rate of violent crime?
I have already testified to the period of 30 to 34 days. We saw a decrease on top of the decreases that we are experiencing already this year.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. But when you're the 435th most powerful member of Congress, I have to ask those questions again.
Yes.
So just act like you've never heard that, and I deserve a Pulitzer Prize for my questioning. Have the criminal justice policies created by the D.C. City Council led to the spike in violent crime in Washington, D.C.?
In my experience, Congressman, there is not one single thing that you point to when crime goes up, and it's usually not one single thing you point to when crime goes down. So my experience as mayor and as a member of the council before that is to throw everything at it. We look at the laws, we look at our deployment strategies, we look at our prevention strategies until we see results. And that's what we've seen over the last 2 years.
Thank you, ma'am. Why is Mr. Mendelson, why has your council continued to push these soft on crime policies when violent crime apparently has skyrocketed in Washington, D.C. as a result?
Well, I don't agree that we have done that. In fact, in my statement at the beginning, I noted a number of changes to the law that the council...
Yes, sir. I mean, well, yesterday, though, we stepped in and have changed a couple of those laws that we felt like proved that y'all were soft on crime.
One of those was the age of 14. That actually was adopted by Congress in 1970.
Okay. What about the one where they're not allowed to chase someone who has stolen a car?
We revised that law, I believe it was last year.
Yet we had to...
When I say revised it, there were complaints we were hearing from the police chief, and we made changes to that law.
Okay. In your statement regarding oversight efforts, you stated that these bills were a completely unnecessary intrusion on the district's ability to make and enforce our laws because of the recent work that council has been doing to combat crime. Are you aware that juvenile crime in Washington, D.C. has increased every year since 2020?
I don't believe that's correct, but the data, the Attorney General would have the exact data. But I will say that juveniles should not be involved in crime. And that should be the goal of any society, of any community, and that's our goal. We do not want juveniles involved in crime. We want them in school, we want them learning, we want them to have every opportunity to achieve as an adult.
Okay. In 2021, Mayor Bowser requested $11 million for additional funding for police officers. In response, you and your colleagues on the D.C. City Council proposed a compromise package that would appropriate $5 million to police officers and various amounts to gun safety initiatives because, as quoted, because the solution can't solely be more police. Why have you consistently tried to impede the work and support systems for police officers?
Well, we haven't consistently. So that is true about 2020 in 2020 for the FY21 budget. Every year since then, we have fully funded the request for MPD, for hiring officers, and for paying officers. Just yesterday, we adopted a 13% pay raise for police officers. So I don't agree that consistently. I would also note MPD has a budget of about $500 million. I think it's actually more than that now. So when you talk about $5 million, I don't think that's even 1%. That's 1/10%. But that was 5 years ago.
But you'd gladly turn that money back in then?
Well, in my testimony earlier, I noted that we've been asking the federal government every year for reimbursement through the appropriation process for the EPSF, and that the Congress has shorted us a total of $83 million over the last 4 years. So you can ask me about $5 million.
Over the last, how many years?
4.
4 years,
million.
okay, that'd be during the Biden administration. General Schwalb, Did I say that right, Schwalb? You said kids
You did. You
should
did.
not be
Thank you.
treated as adults. At what age does a kid become an adult?
Under our law, children are considered juveniles until they're 18.
Okay, thank you. And I'm out of time. Again, thank y'all for being here, Mayor.
Thank you.
Pleasure, ma'am.
Thank you.
During a House Oversight Committee hearing last week, Representative Tim Burchett of Tennessee pressed D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, Council Chairman Phil Mendelson, and Attorney General Brian Schwalb over crime policy in the nation's capital. The exchange highlighted long-standing tensions between Congress and local D.C. leadership over how to address rising violence and the role of policing. Burchett began his remarks by criticizing Democrats for holding on to files for 4 years without action, then shifting their focus on them now. He thanked the witnesses for attending and lightened the moment with a reference to his own experience as a county mayor, joking that on difficult days, public officials might wish they had chosen a simpler career. But the questioning quickly turned serious as Burchett asked Bowser whether former President Trump's policies during his administration had reduced violent crime in Washington, D.C. Bowser replied that during a 30 to 34-day period, the city did see a decrease in violent incidents, which came on top of other reductions that were already taking place that year. Burchett followed up by asking whether the city council's policies had caused crime spikes. Bowser pushed back, saying there is never just one reason crime rises or falls. She explained that as mayor and previously as a council member, her approach was to examine every possible factor: laws, police deployment, and prevention strategies. By throwing multiple solutions at the problem, the city had managed to bring numbers down in recent years, she said. Attention then shifted to Phil Mendelson, who defended the council against accusations of being soft on crime. Burchett pointed to measures such as limits on prosecuting juveniles and restrictions on car chases as examples of leniency. Mendelson disagreed, explaining that some of the policies criticized had in fact been adopted by Congress decades earlier, including the rule on prosecuting 14-year-olds, which originated in 1970. He added that the council had already revised its car chase policy after receiving concerns from the police chief, showing a willingness to adjust laws when necessary. The debate touched on juvenile crime trends, with Burchett asserting that youth involvement in crime has gone up every year since 2020. Mendelson disputed that data but stressed that regardless of statistics, the council's goal is to keep young people in school and out of the justice system. Juveniles should not be involved in crime, he said, adding that every community should aim to give children the chance to succeed as adults. Funding for police also became a flashpoint. Burchett reminded the panel that in 2021, Bowser had asked for $11 million to support police hiring, but the council approved a compromise package that allocated $5 million to the police and redirected other funds toward gun safety programs. He framed this as undermining law enforcement at a time when crime was rising. Mendelson countered by noting that since 2021, the council has fully funded the Metropolitan Police Department's requests, including officer hiring and pay. He pointed out that just the day before the hearing, the council approved a 13% raise for police officers, and that the department operates on a budget of more than $500 million. In his view, the earlier $5 million cut was being exaggerated, as it represented less than 1% of MPD's overall budget. Mendelson also criticized Congress for withholding federal reimbursements, noting that the city has been shorted a total of $83 million over the past 4 years. That gap, he argued, has a much larger effect on the city's ability to fund safety initiatives than disputes over relatively small local budget adjustments. As the hearing wound down, Attorney General Brian Schwalb weighed in on the issue of juvenile offenders. He clarified that under D.C. law, children are legally considered juveniles until they reach 18, outlining the framework that guides how cases involving young people are handled in the district. Burchett closed his time by thanking the witnesses again, though not without underscoring his concern that policies from the council have failed to match the urgency of the crime problem. The exchange reflected the broader clash between federal lawmakers and local officials over how Washington, D.C. should balance law enforcement, prevention, and youth justice in its fight against violent crime.